Before we begin, thank you very much to Armada Hotshot Escaped Containment again for pitching in over on Ko-fi. Thank you very much for the fun shout out. Armada Hotshot escapes containment more often than you would think. Like, this is not like a rare event or anything. He just has his way of getting out. I've plugged every hole there is. I cannot figure out where he's wiggling out of the cage. Like, at this point, it's not even a cage. It's a box. He's in a box now, and he still gets out. But thank you very much. Always, always appreciated. So let us talk Seekers today. So any given time, a Starscream toy, or, geez, these days, he might be a Thundercracker first, but any time that we get a brand new Seeker mold, we are always going through the exact same motions, right? Oh, get ready for the repaints. We'll just bang them out left and right. Get ready to see this mold on your shelf for the next 5 years. And you know what? Most of the time, that's correct. But there are plenty of examples in Transformer history where a Starscream or even someone else was released, and we never really got anything else out of it. So, we're going to take a look at all those toys that kind of missed their opportunity to release an army of Seekers upon us. Now, for the sake of keeping this as simple as possible, we are limiting our scope for this video. I'm going to leave out anything from, like, specific gimmick lines. For instance, like fast action battlers, or I don't know, your bot shots, your, tiny turbo changer, your Titan changers, all that kind of stuff. There's tons of Starscreams that they never used again. Not going to bother with those. We're also going to keep the Legends Legion talk short, because there are plenty of examples of those that didn't get reused. I'm just going to show you the more surprising ones there. And we're going to leave out movie Starscream. Just almost every one of movie Starscream's toys never got repainted into any of the other Seekers. So just for the sake of limiting the scope so we're not here all day, that's what we're going to do. But we continue on and we go through the ones that I have included, and there's still plenty of options, going all the way back to the Pretender Starscream. At this point, this is not well established, right? Like, because you didn't have an internet community, in 1989. So this stuff you didn't really expect back then. I mean, that said, this was individually released for some markets, so the possibility of getting the other Seekers was there. Just, no one really ever thought of it, I guess. Again, this is before this just became a convention. You just expected Skywarp and Thundercracker to be released. That's the other rule that we're going to go with. I'm going to leave it to just Skywarp and Thundercracker. That should be obvious from whatever title I pick for this video. But for the most part, I can't cover every single Seeker possibility here. We're just going to stick to the main trio. But that does mean they could have done it here. Now, Action Masters was not above repainting the cast into other variations. And yes, there is an Action Master Thundercracker, but if you would say he was repainted into Thundercracker, that's a reach. That's a reach, to say the least. Point being, this one, again, probably could have been a really easy one to just repaint and call it a day. Yeah, I'm surprised that some bigger vehicle like the big tank like Megatron had, that seems like it would have been a shoe-in for just Thundercracker and Skywarp to be dropped in as part of the package. Never happened. Don't know why. This stuff would have been easy. But it's weird. That push kind of continued into the 90s, where really only Starscream mattered. I suppose that's because Starscream's toys sold far better than Thundercracker and Skywarp, for those who don't follow this kind of thing. Thundercracker and Skywarp were discontinued after 1984 to make room for the Coneheads, but Starscream, they continued releasing because his character and his toy was so popular, all the way into 1986, hence why he came back as a ghost. So at the time, they probably didn't see nearly as much name value in attempting to keep Skywarp and Thundercracker on the toy shelves. That continued into Generation 2. Now, I mean, technically, this is the G1 mold, So I'm not really breaking any ground here. You know, obviously every Seeker touched, the classic mold at some point. But this is the unique G2 version, unique launchers, the voice pack, and it did come out as Ramjet. And again, no Skywarp, no Thundercracker. Wouldn't see them again until name dumps for Machine Wars. That was like 1996, so it's a hot minute in between Thundercracker and Skywarp reuses. If we go into the 2000s, that is when we start hitting some of the more interesting situations. So, Armada Starscream, in his original incarnation, was redone into the entire trio. In a really dubious manner. Like, the blue version was just Starscream in a super mode, but it was called Thundercracker on the US toy shelves, so it counts as a Thundercracker. And Skywarp, for whatever reason, they decided, we're going to retool a bunch of parts on the Skywarp. I made a whole video about how Skywarp is always the weird one. Anytime they do a set of Seekers, Skywarp is always the one who ends up being done a little bit weird compared to everybody else. This is a really good example. But the one on screen right now isn't that version. No. It is the modern version that came out during during Legacy. This one is, again, surprising. So the original deluxe version, not the original, but like the original remake of this design, that one was done as all three, with Skywarp being a TFCC exclusive. But this one? No. We got it as Starscream Super Mode out of Japan, thanks to Takara, but Hasbro flat out stated they were not planning on doing that deco in the US, which kind of struck really, really weird. And then Skywarp never happened either. This toy, in fact, never got any reuse in the US, which is extremely rare for a Seeker. Like, I'm genuinely confused by it. I mean, there's still a possibility this mold is not terribly old. They like doing weird multi-packs, so I don't know. Someday, potentially, we could see this one. For now, the mold remains pretty unique. It's kind of weird. Weirder still, we go back to Energon, and this one is, again, seems like prime opportunity for repainting, and it never happened. We got it in G1 colors due to the Power Links repaint, or not even the Power Links, the Energon Starscream, the Energon Starscream toy. They thought these names out very long and hard. This mold was reused and repainted a couple times, but as Skyquake and Leozak, never Skywarp or Thundercracker, which is weird because this is a far more traditional looking Seeker design than anything from Armada or Cybertron, making it stranger for the omission. See, by this point, I think we were starting to assume that we would just get all three Seekers again, thanks to the Armada releases. So it was weird to see one kind of passes by, especially when it was a well-received toy like this. Even more surprising when the Cybertron version happened, and they were spotty at best with this release. So obviously it never became the Skywarp like I always wanted it to, which still hurts to this day. But it never really became anyone else either. Thundercracker was a completely different character in the show, and they made a Skywarp based on him. Later on, this toy became Shattered Glass Starscream, Dirge for some reason. But there's also a maroon red version out there that was Toys R Us exclusive. It got its reuses, but never as any of his classic brethren, which is, again, kind of weird. And that weirdness continued on into the modern version, where, again, this mold has not gotten reused yet. Now, this is still a pretty recent figure. This is Legacy United, if I remember right. And it's still there. It's still completely viable. According to computer listings, we were supposed to get a Cybertron Skywarp from this, and the fact it got canceled will never not hurt. But it never came out as Thundercracker either. And this time, there was no Takara looking to fill the gap. Of course, they're looking for show-accurate characters, so doing an offbeat repaint that technically doesn't exist Yeah, that's probably not their wheelhouse anyway. So nothing happening there. What surprised me the most here is that there is also the Legend Starscream to discuss. I don't want to go too far into Legends because, again, there's plenty of Starscreams that didn't get used for all three. But this one is particularly weird because it did actually come out as Skywarp. It's the one semblance I have of those colors on that design. But despite how many other Seekers it came out as, never Thundercracker. Weird to me. So it came out as Sunstorm. It came out as Ramjet. It came out as Thrust. It came out as a few other Seekers, not to mention countless different variations of just normal Starscream colors. Never Thundercracker. It was weird. In fact, if you go through all versions of this mold, I could have gone the Supreme Glass. Supreme Glass didn't get repainted anyone either. If I went into every version of this mold, the only Seeker to not be touched by any of them is Thundercracker. Even Dirge got a repaint from one of them, and he makes no sense. Weird. Super weird. If we're going to stay on a track for Cybertronian Starscreams, this is where I'm going to start bouncing around in history a little bit just to keep you on your toes. But we're going to go into the Cybertronian side of Starscream designs, and this will talk about RID 2015 Starscream. Now, very simple toy, but not a bad mold. It's one of the few times that I've seen them try to recreate the silhouette of the coronation armor in a standard Starscream, which is kind of a neat idea. Kind of a shame they never really, gave it a paint job to capitalize on said neat idea, but interesting to see at the very least. He makes the list for the same reason as the previous toy. This was redone as Skywarp, never as Thundercracker. And again, strikes me a little bit odd, right? So now I'm starting to worry about Thundercracker. Now, he does get his due. He does get his due. So I didn't include him on the list because he didn't start off as a Starscream. I wanted to do all the ones that started off as Starscream. But we do have, of course, the modern 86 Thundercracker, which we already know is going to be come out as Skywarp and Starscream. And we had, what was the other one I'm thinking of? Oh, the Combiner War Leader class. That one started life as a Jetfire, retooled into Thundercracker first, then Starscream, then Skywarp. So that one is not on the list either, but Thundercracker technically started that one too. So as I said, there's a couple of examples where it's not always Starscream. But again, this one is weird because it seems like such a simple figure to repaint, and they're just one step away from just doing all three. Completely missed. Weird. And I'd say the same about the Cyberverse Deluxe. Now, there's two versions of this design. There's the Warrior class, and that one was done in all of the Seeker colors thanks to some big crazy repaint pack. And I want to say Skywarp and Thundercracker were both done from the previous Warrior class version of that design as well. Point being, this Deluxe, not reused. I believe this is the version that was reused for Earthspark's Deluxe Starscream, which looks nothing like he does in the show. But it was never reused in and of itself in any of the other Seekers, which I think is kind of a shame because I think it's kind of a cool design that they just kind of left on the table and did nothing with it. I like it for what it is. I like the toy. I like the overall look. Not a bad figure. I do have this one lying around somewhere. Never got used. There's going to be one more Cybertronian Starscream we'll throw into this, and it's core class, but it does kind of count because the core class Bumblebee Starscream never got reused into any of his others, which is again weird because those Seekers do appear in the movie. They would be viable. But not a lot to say on this one, just a weird omission. And the fact that it's a core class means we're probably never getting them. But you never know when they're going to throw some small figure in to fill out a multi-pack. So if you like the mold, fingers crossed. Animated tried so hard to get this done. So on the smaller end of the scale, I believe Thundercracker was done, but Skywarp was not. That's the Activator line. This one they did the Sky Warp. They also did Sunstorm out of this mold as well. They never got around to Thundercracker. Thundercracker is famously one of the figures from Animated that was canceled just at the tail end of the line. And that's a shame for the Seeker collectors. So you can have a Sky Warp, Thundercracker, Starscream trio here, but Thundercracker has to be super small. I don't know how you want to contextualize that, but there you go. I mean, it's the only way it works. Here's one you don't think of, because this is an incredibly forgettable Starscream, because it's a pre-tool and it got completely overwritten. So how about Power of the Primes? This one got repainted into no Seekers whatsoever, and this one I can kind of understand why. I can't imagine Skywarp as the core of a combiner. That feels like you are inviting disaster. There's just something about him in particular where I went, no, you don't get to be in control of the giant robot. I'm sorry. You do not. No, we don't do this. We can't confirm this. You have no certification. You did not pass your certification, Skywarp. So I can understand this one. And this one really is kind of a cheat because it's technically just Starscream in like design only. This is a pre-tool for the Elita 1 because it was very clear the goal they had was to do Elita 1 as the core of the other Search for Alpha Trion female Autobots. I mean, they could have done that from the start, but this is a case of, well, we need to make sure we make money on the mold. So we're going to do Starscream, the major character, first, make the easy sale off of a toy that's kind of and then we'll do Elita 1 later and do what we actually want to do with it. That's how it goes sometimes. Now, there's a few molds here that are still very, very new, so we cannot pass judgment on them yet, but suffice to say, none of them have been repainted as of this video. That's going to go for Cyberworld Starscream, which you know is just a matter of time, and weirdly enough, already shares a mold with Mirage, of all figures, but, you know, I don't know. Cyberworld is a little bit weird. We also have these. The Timelines figures, which so far we have not seen or heard of any repaints. Hasbro has been asked. They said if they do well, they are perfectly willing to expand it to include characters that were not in these initial runs, or, you know, of course, Seeker repaints. The Starscream's completely made up, so who knows if they'll ever do that. But the Hearts of Steel design, we do see Thundercracker and Skywarp in this design. This is 100% viable and ready to do. But we're going to end it off here on the one that surprised me the most. The one where I'm like, this can't be possible. This can't be real that this actually happened. And it's Prime Starscream. Now, the first edition Prime toy, that one did come out as all three Seekers. Obviously, now, none of them ever came out in G1 colors, so it does look a little bit odd to see, like, you know, like first edition Prime Starscream, just like as Thundercracker, as Skywarp, and then just the gray and the bluish gray from the cartoon on the Starscream. But that said, the Beast Hunter obviously never got the repaint or retool into any of them. The closest we got was that, yes, they repainted this pretty significantly for the Takara release, but just to make it show accurate in colors. This obviously never came out of Skywarp or Thundercracker, and probably would have been really weird if this is the one they decided to go all in on 3 Seekers for. Likewise, we never got that out of this version either. This is the original Cyberverse. And this one is, again, this one's not a bad figure. You know, for a Commander class, remember, it's the original Commander class. They're like that big. Again, would have been easy to repaint. I don't think either Skywarp or Thundercracker came out from this mold. There is a blue version, but remember Starscream is a bluish gray in that show. So really it was just a different interpretation of his colors being released. But still, Starscream stands alone. And here was the weirdest one to me. The mainline Voyager. Not only was this never repainted into Skywarp or Thundercracker, this was never reused, period. And that's shocking to me that there is any kind of mainline Starscream that was never reused for anything. You know, everyone just kind of wanted to use the first edition, right? So like Takara did their exclusives, so we got the Seeker Trio there. Over here, the Collectors Club, Fun Pub wanted to do Slipstream, and that worked out really, really well. I could have sworn this was one of the Dark Energon repaints that the Big Bad Toy Store put out, but no, that was also the first edition. It's wild to me that any mainline Starscream get no usage, but here we have like 3 different molds in Transformers Prime of this Starscream. None of them got the Seeker treatment, and most of them went completely on. I want to say they all went unused except for maybe the Commander, which is a crazy run of figures for me. So that's about as extreme of an example as I can get. For the most part, yes, every Seeker we get is eventually going to see a blue and a black repaint. Obviously, it's going to happen more times than not. But it's fascinating to me how many times we have been gypped out of that. So don't take it as a given. Every now and then, they just don't seem interested. And sometimes I'm kind of at a loss why not. But that's going to do it for me today. This is mostly a video to kind of settle your curiosity. How many times has the Seeker Trio been missed out on? More often than I thought, actually. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.